In all of the businesses that I've done, I wear 3 hats. I'm an executive chef. I'm the executive chef for the American Refugee Committee, based out of America. I'm also a professor of innovation at the University of Southern California. I teach the doctoral program of social work, and I teach innovation dynamics and design thinking. Lots of jargon. I teach people how to do this kind of stuff who really care about it. And then the third thing is we run these businesses. That's one of 5. And the other that I think really matters today that we'll talk about is our brewery and farm. It's an 11-acre farm and brewery where we hire people with developmental delays and work on agricultural best practices and all that sort of jazz. So those are my jobs. What I love doing the most, really, outside of creating those structures is this. And so this isn't gonna be a typical fucking sage on the stage talk, because I don't believe in them. I think what's really important is, as you walk away from this today, is that you take something that you didn't bring with you. And if I don't do that, then I failed, and call me out on it. Deal? Show of hands? Fantastic. I see you still sitting at the back. Don't think I'm not judging. Okay, so this is the single greatest business tool I can teach anybody. In my 25 years of doing various things, 9 of them spent here in Melbourne, which is one of the reasons I'm so excited to closing keynote today. This was the tool that I wish I had. So whenever you feel triggered, or whenever you feel like something is going poorly, or you're having an interaction with somebody in business, or you're about to say some shit you know you're gonna regret later, this. So what I'm gonna do with us right now is we're just gonna close our eyes together, because it's not weird. And then we're gonna take one deep breath of 8 all the way in and all the way out, and just notice. So right now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and back out. And then one more breath, big one, and just notice your body. And open. That's the tool. Every time that I want to react when somebody says, "Oh, you mean bums?" I take those 8 breaths, and it's saved me a lot of things, and other people. So when I'm speaking, I often get to go to really cool places, and one of the places that I got to travel to recently is up north in British Columbia, and I was having a particularly bad day. I was just having a really shitty day with partners and engagement and things that were going on, and I went for a walk because I had to talk the next day, and I ran into this gentleman who's named Michael, and Michael had been homeless for about 14 years. He came from Montreal, so he's on the whole other side of Canada, and he's like, I say to him, "Hey, do you want to grab something to eat?" And he's like, "Nah, I've already eaten, I'm good. How are you doing?" I was like, "Actually, man, I'm not doing very good." And I unleashed for a solid 20 minutes. And he listened intently and was like, "Yeah, man, for sure." And at the end of that unleashing, it wasn't lost on me how different our situations were. Michael was literally living in the street with his cart. And we finished our conversation. I'm like, "Hey, man, I'm sorry to burden you with this." And he was like, "It's literally no burden, but I want to show you something." And he grabbed this sign out of the back of his cart and he showed it to me. And one of the things that I preach really heavily is there's no us and them. In any of these situations, whether we're talking about refugees or migrants, any of that stuff, or people who are facing any adversity, from street entrenchment to mental illness, physical disabilities, etc., there's no us and them, there's only us. And the assumptions that we make that somebody couldn't be helpful are completely wrong. In that moment, Michael made me reassess everything that was going on, and I went and did my job the next day and put my own bullshit aside. And one of the inquiries that I consistently make around this stuff is, I'm gonna go up here, it might feel weird. It does. What does this mean? What does this mean in 2019 to actually have courage? And the way that I've framed it for myself and for our organization is that this has got to be the center point of what that is. So to consistently be standing for other people, folks that may not have a voice that should have a voice. So I'm making an assumption about the quality of the crowd. If you feel like this isn't you, that's fine. It will be within 18 minutes and 17 seconds. And one of the things I also want you to think about right now is this, and this will be a takeaway for you. So whoever you flash to first, then you probably flash to somebody second. And usually that second is somebody who you aspire to. So it could be Michael Jordan in my instance, could be Muhammad Ali, could be Mahatma Gandhi, could be Mother Teresa, could be any of those people. Let's shelve them for now. All right, let's just assume that they have qualities of great leaders. And what is the other person that came to mind? Who's the person that when you get up, you're like, man, I hope that that person would be proud of me. Maybe you don't talk to them anymore, maybe they've passed. And this is mine. This is a gentleman named Mike Haggerty. And I'll tell this story briefly because if I get into it too much, I get sidetracked and I end up telling football Mike stories for like 35 minutes and I get kicked off the stage and it doesn't go well for anybody. But when I was just operating traditional businesses before I pivoted to social impact, I would see this guy on the streets all the time doing exactly this. And I was incredibly curious about who paid him. That was my first thing. I was like, who pays this guy to sweep up the streets? Because my place looks great because of him. And he doesn't seem to have a penny or a tag or anything that denominates who he works for. And he would show up every single day, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., and just clean. In the part-time, he's a model. And Mike and I met because of a real critical moment that occurred. So I'd like to just state at this moment, this is 2006, I would not engage people who looked like they had any sort of mental illness or homelessness on the street. I would fake a phone call if I saw somebody. I would cross the street. I would do all of those same behaviors that a lot of people exude. And it was because I was like, I'm not sure what I would say and I'm not sure what I would do. And if I don't know what to do, then I'm freaking out and the moment's passed. All right? As somebody who was formerly unhoused, I would do that. And I didn't know why until I met Mike. And so I met Mike one morning. My restaurant was right across the street from where I was living, my first one. And I walked out and I saw Mike, who usually looked like this, laying down on the ground, literally covered in snow on a piece of cardboard. And I was like, oh shit, I think he's dead. I was like, what am I gonna do about that? Like, do I go? I should go check on him. Of course I'm gonna go check on him. So immediately the rush came, and as I started to walk over, I saw him move, and I was like, uh-oh, I'm committed. And so I got across the street, and I was like, all right, what do I say? And I kneeled down, I was like, hey man, are you okay? And he looked straight up at me and went, yeah, no. I was like, I knew that. That's why I came over here. And we ended up having this conversation, and he came into my restaurant. I coaxed him in. I was like, hey, would you like a coffee? And it was 9 a.m. And he's like, do you have beer? And we became really fast friends. So he came in, we started to talk about his situation and what had happened to him. Mike ended up starting work for me that day directly. Mike was never hired by anybody. He has OCD and Asperger's syndrome combined with 30 years of heroin abuse and methamphetamine use. And why he was out cleaning the streets every single day is because he'd been estranged from his family, and he was concerned that his daughter would come down and either step on a needle or a broken crack pipe. All day, every day, that obsessive-compulsive behavior to look after somebody he'd been estranged from. So instead of seeing that as, wow, that's nuts, I saw it as a real boon in a work ethic. And he became employee 1. And as of 2 years ago, retired, 8 years into his employ, essentially to babysit his grandson full-time. So through our time together, he got reconnected with his family and just became a really important figure to all of the people in my company, and still is, about what that looks like. The reason I didn't go over to talk to Mike or anybody else before all of that, and I really want this to sit, is because of ego. 100% because of ego. I didn't want to go talk to anybody because I was scared if they asked me for something I couldn't give them, I would feel some type of way, which is really fucked up, but true. So the second that I realized that if somebody asks you for something, just like anybody else who asks you for something, you don't have to give anybody anything, and you could just have a conversation, and everybody's cool with that, it all goes away. And there's just us, no them. Again, with the modeling. So what that put in front of me was the thought of, like, what does it look like to always see the ability? We say the word disability, we don't say that anymore at all. We say diverse ability. What is the ability that is 10x in a human being that's faced adversity? And what does it mean to be truly inclusive? The people we talked about earlier that make up 58% as of today of our workforce have different barriers that they've faced to the world, not just to employment. And what I want to talk about with these folks is this is absolute fact, and it's universally fact, that they're the longest standing and most dependable employees in the whole company. That's not one, that's not two, that's all. And why? The fact of the matter is that folks who haven't been given a shot, we'll use the service industry as an example because it's the easiest one. Has anybody ever worked in a restaurant? Yeah, we're in Melbourne, right? Okay. So when you were working in that restaurant, chances are, was that always going to be your primary job? Does anybody still work in a restaurant? Just you. Okay, great. So we can understand that there's a fairly transient population that works in restaurants, right? 82% per annum turnover. Every employee costs me about $2,000 to train. I have 200 employees right now. If that's my metric, no wonder restaurants fail all the time, right? And that $2,000 is in breakage, extra management hours, et cetera, et cetera. That's a median number. Folks who have a diverse ability turn over at less than 30% on a national average. In my company, less than 5%. So if they make up 58% and they're turning over less, you can follow the math. This is a business tool. This is about making money right now in this part of the conversation. And there should be no weird feelings about it. By helping somebody with a leg up and enriching the community of your workforce, you're going to make more money, no fucking tricks. That's it. So the thoughts of this also bubble around my head a lot, which is, what is the courage to move from intention to innovation? And innovation is a word that is always associated with technology. I don't think that that has to be the case. I think that innovations come in all shapes and sizes, and we were innovating long before we had the internet. This thing that you just saw about, when you create something that essentially engages a lot of folks, you get a lot of press around it. And when this happened, we got a ton of press. And because we got a ton of press, a ton of advocates were really pissed off, particularly these two gentlemen. I was opening a live music venue, and I got a text message from a really good friend of mine who hosts breakfast television, and he said, "Are you okay?" all in capital letters. And I looked down at my phone, I was like, I'll get to that in a sec. He sent a second one. I looked down, I was like, I'm fine, dude, are you all right? And he just sent back one word, anarchists, all in capitals. I was like, oh shit, he snapped. So I texted back, have you been drinking? To which he responded, no, check your email. This picture was there. This is my butcher shop sign. So it was stolen by these two anarchists, and attached was a form threat letter that they were going to systemically, brick by brick, break down all of my businesses until I left the neighborhood. That part's fine, and that wasn't abnormal. They also physically threatened all my staff. There's a problem there. So I went past breath directly into anger and ran into my office and was like, okay, we're going to find these dudes. We know a lot of people. We're going to figure it out. And my office was like, why don't you just calm down? We're going to be on the front page of every paper tomorrow. This is an opportunity. And so we designed for the opportunity, and this was the pivot in my career. It's about 8 years ago now, 7 years. And we built this. In the center of the anarchist face is my dear friend Steve, who used to live under a bridge before he became our head of security, and our dear friend Lee, and a handsome manager from our diner. Anarchists, Steve, anarchist Steve, you get the idea. We created the sign with zero rebuttal, zero response, and just put it outside and said, if anybody comes down and takes a picture with this as an anarchist, we will buy a meal for the recently unfunded women's shelter 2 blocks away. Within about 4 days, 3,000 people had come down and taken pictures. It was one of the single greatest business moves we made as that diner because people had never been down. And they supported continually. While folks might not have the voice for it, nobody wants to see each other react in anger to this stuff. It's not helpful. It doesn't help, and it just proves these guys would have been right. Instead, they finished their political science degrees and disappeared. That program has led to over 36 barrier employees. Because we make that many sandwiches, we've redeemed now 119,000 of these tokens in our neighborhood. So we talk about low friction with charity. Everybody's like, everybody wants to do the lowest touch, easiest thing in charity. That's how you get people on board. Bullshit. You have to come to my neighborhood, buy this thing, go outside, talk to a human being, and hand it to them. 118,000 times in a 300,000 downtown population. Proof, just data. So that's the opportunity. And what is the opportunity in design? To do the right thing in every step, every day. So you'll notice Football Mike on the left-hand side now has an eye patch. It's not a fashion accessory. He did lose his eye from long-term heroin abuse. I think he looks great. He has moments of doubt. The gentleman in the center lived street and trench for 7 years. One of the high-friction things that I designed was people were always coming trying to cook with us. And they'd come and they'd be like, hey, can I come in your kitchen and cook with you? I'd be like, cool, are you a chef? They'd be like, nah. I'm like, cool, what do you do? And they're like, I'm an accountant. I'm like, you're way more valuable not cutting your finger off in my kitchen. Why don't you help us do some book work? And people were like, oh, bummer. It's one of the few professions that other people are like, oh, I could totally do that. Like, we cook for 1,200 people a day. You're going to burn something. It's not helpful, and I'm not going to teach you for free. So we designed another project called Plenty of Plates. And in Plenty of Plates, we charge people $5,000 to bring 10 friends. We teach them how to cook for 75 people. They then scrub the kitchen, set up the diner, serve 75 people from the neighborhood who are living in shelter or street entrenched a fine dining experience with a menu and ordering. Then those people leave, and then they have to scrub the whole restaurant. I was like, you want to cook for me? Yeah, that's what you're going to do. I thought nobody would do it. I underestimated how long that clap was going to be. I'm good. We only got a couple minutes left. So I thought that would happen like once, maybe twice. I have to shut my diner 3 nights a week for it. People can't get enough. I've had to limit companies to quarterly. It is the highest friction thing you can do. It's an 8-hour, like, begrudging dish pitch shift, essentially. People are like, give me more and I'll throw money at you. Don't assume that people want shit to be easy. This is the automation argument for workforce, right? It's like, oh yeah, we'll just make everything automatic. You press a button, there'll be a quinoa bowl with salmon. Bullshit. I want to see somebody make that. I don't want to watch a machine do it. I have no interest, nor do most people. So this is some more theory, and I'm going to have to go pretty quick here. Isolation is the single biggest cause of addiction and instability. It is terrifying. It is killing all of us. It is not just people who are street entrenched. Fentanyl has taken rock stars and dudes who sleep on the corner. And people are sad, and they are lonely, and it sucks. So what we really care about is creating spaces of convening. While everybody else is looking at what the next digital platform and how somebody can deliver to their door, I'm taking leases of 10,000 square foot spaces every chance I can get to create spaces. These are some of the words that we work by. I'm going to skip through those because we already talked about it. Okay? So back to these dudes. With that Plenty of Plates thing I just described, I got an email. You never really know what is going to happen with the design until you let it live, right? And when you let it live, you're like, oh shit, that happened? With this one, I got this email, and I'm going to read it to you real quick. It's from the guy in the middle. Hey, Mark, I just wanted to say thank you to your team for being absolutely amazing and supportive of the community. I'm working on looking at what it means to honor relationships for those in the community. Relationships are not honored, especially in our homeless population. I remember when Una, his now wife, and I started our relationship living homeless and never had a date for the first 4 years. A date. So where am I going with this is that I have 3 couples coming to Plenty of Plates tonight, and this is a game changer for those people being honored in their relationship. So thank you so much for building the capacity and making the space in this community. What the fuck are you talking about? Oh, this. And this. I would have designed just for this if I had thought of it. But we didn't have to. When you have a space of convening, naturally these beautiful things happen. This can't happen online. This doesn't exist on the internet. Advocates matter. We heard the last speaker talk heavily about gender equality. We took it a step further and made all of our events last year chefs in small brackets that happen to be female. If you want to find a place of misogyny, step in a kitchen 3 years ago. Real easy. I also cook. This is my moment where I show off my chef skills. Pretty great, right? Oh yeah, what about this one? Those are quail's eggs. Ever peel and soft boil 5,000 quail's eggs? Don't. So this is a story I'm going to finish with, I promise, guys. I won't go over. When we created this dinner series that was chefs that happened to be female, leading and talking and advocacy, we went to Toronto. Is everybody familiar with where Toronto is? Hell yeah, who just yelled? You and me later. I don't drink, but I'll buy. We were supporting this organization called Sistering. Sistering works with the most extremely mentally ill street-entrenched women in Toronto. Nobody's ever fucking heard of them. They are the single most important not-for-profit in my mind in Ontario. So I was like, how do we raise awareness? So we set this dinner up, and on the night of, we're totally sold out, on the night of, the speaker, who is the founder, is unable to show up. Like 2 hours before. I'm like, oh shit, this is really important. I've got everybody psyched up. Nobody could tell the story as good as her. This woman shows up. Her name is Sally McLean. She'd recently moved from Victoria. Does anybody know where Victoria is, aside from you? Excellent. Okay, so you know how far away that is, right? It's here to Perth. So Sally shows up. The guy who was generously given the venue to us, this is him. His name is Laudato Thong. He's given us his coffee roaster and coffee shop. He's an incredible man, all right? He donates the shop. Sally's not supposed to speak. Losay is not supposed to be there. Losay shows up anyway because he's like, I just felt like I should show up. This is him and his family. This is why he hadn't shown up. So Sally gets up to speak, and I am not prepared. I think she's going to be okay. She's never spoken before. What? She gets up. I'm nervous. You can see I'm standing behind her. I'm like, oh, God, I hope this goes well. Not helpful, P.S. And she fucking crushes it. Like, I am weepy. I take the microphone back from her, and I'm sorry, I'm going to need a second. Genuinely, I need a second. And I stepped out back. Well, this guy follows me out back. And he's like, I have to speak to her. I'm like, did you just hear me say I needed a minute? And he's like, I know, but I have to speak to her. I'm like, dude, she's out there. Go talk to her. So he does. And he comes back after that service and goes, okay, this is going to be a little bit weird, but I never shared this with you. I was a refugee when I was a kid. I was like, oh, crazy. He's like, yeah, that's kind of why I have this heart for these sorts of things. Sally worked at a refugee camp. I was like, oh, no way, crazy, where? He's like, in India. That's me and her. When you're doing things in the universe, that's what happens. There's 7 billion fucking people on the planet. What do you mean these two? That's him as a baby. All right, you're going to come up here with me and not yell at me. We're going to do this quick contract. All right, you ready? Come on up.
Oh, shit. What? I was just going to ask questions.
Stay there, not yet. All right, so is anybody a lawyer? Show of hands. Great. Okay, no lawyers. We can talk shit about lawyers. Just joking. So has anybody ever been in a contract of any sort before? All right, we're about to be in. I'm going to say something to you, and then you're going to say it back to me. You ready?
Yep.
I promise to leave the world a better place than I found it.
A better place than I found it.
Shake, don't spit on it. Okay, great. Do you believe him? Everybody stand up and do the exact same thing to your partner, please. Do it quickly, otherwise I'm going to get fired from the job I never get hired for.
All right. No questions. People are just mesmerized. Come on, give me something.
There's no questions? That's great, because they're listening.
Yeah.
And we'll ask them, oh shit. Which is great, because we've got that time, so we didn't burn it. Yeah. Okay, guys, okay, sit down. Thank you for being so great and sitting down. Y'all usually stand up the whole time. This is a quote. Well, first of all, we're your witnesses. That's what we were just discussing. You've all been captured by technology doing that contract. If you see each other in the street, you're going to be like, hey, how's that thing going anyway? And really call each other out on that shit, all right? This is a quote that I care deeply about, and I'm going to read it to you, and then we'll finish. Bad food is made without pride by cooks who have no pride and no love. Bad food is made by chefs who are indifferent or are trying to be everything to everybody, who are trying to please everyone. Bad food's fake food. Food that shows fear and lack of confidence in people's ability to discern or to make decisions about their lives. That was by this guy. We really need to look after each other. Last thing I want to say is check in on each other. When things get darkest, we need to be our brightest. We need to love our hardest. Thank you very much.